Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Ethereum and the fact that so far Ethuary continues. If you guys like the content, subscribe to the channel. Let's go for 100,000 subscribers. Give the video a thumbs up. Check out the Telegram channel in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So Ethereum has had a phenomenal move since March. Okay. And if we just take a step back, we will remember this move in the future when we talk about future moves and what might be possible. We'll look back at this move and say, so far we're up 1,300% to the top 1,500%, and there still could be gas in the tank. And the reason why this is important is because we've spent a lot of time comparing it to these other moves. Exactly the significance of or how high we will ultimately trend is more or less anyone's guess. But for instance, this was a 4,800% move over 242 days. This one here was 6,000% over 166 days, or if you take it to the top, 22,000%, a modest 22,000% over 382 days. And this one so far is 1,283% over 308 days. Now, one of the things you notice about a lot of these moves is that they're not monotonically going up, right? There's periods where they come back down even. Here's a period where Ethereum bled 78 or 68%. So Ethereum bled 68%, a modest 68% against USD, but we don't, when we look back in history, we don't necessarily consider that to be that significant, even though if you lived through it, it certainly was. So today, what we've seen is we've seen Bitcoin pull back a little, or yesterday we saw Bitcoin pull back a little, and now it's at 32,440. So it has come back down. It has moved back up a little bit today, but make no mistake, it has been bleeding, right? There's no way that we can pretend like it hasn't been. We can see that, in fact, it has been bleeding for a while, and so one of the things we would note is that despite the fact that it has been bleeding, right, despite however you want to draw this line, despite the fact that it's been bleeding, Ether Bitcoin is a champ, right? It's still at a valuation of 0.0381. And, this certainly can appeal to people who have no interest in going to fiat, right? If your goal is to trade crypto to crypto and you just want to go back and forth and ride the momentum shifts of the market, then who cares, right? If you operate in a deterministic way, which of course is somewhat dangerous, but if you operate in a deterministic way that says Bitcoin should go higher than 42K this market cycle and Ethereum should go higher than $1,400 this market cycle, then you might not necessarily care about going to USD. What you would care about more so is how do you make the most of your money in the cryptos that you own. And one of the things we discussed endlessly throughout Q4 was that we would expect Ethereum to bleed against Bitcoin in Q4, and it did. And then we anticipated this major move of Ether against Bitcoin in January. And so far, I would say it's been a huge success, right? If we take a measured move from the bottom to the top, it's up against Bitcoin a modest 71%. And 71%, again, it might not be anything to write home about, but that still is a substantial move. You can see that we've essentially wiped away the losses that we incurred from October through December. And in fact, we're above the candles from August and September. The only thing we're not above in recent times is the September wick that took us to the 50-month moving average. And where is the 50-month moving average? Well, again, back then it was at 0.041. It was at 0.0405. Now it's at 0.0417 or so. So it stands to go a little bit higher if in fact it has enough juice in the tank to make it to the same milestone that it did in the summer. So far, Ethuary continues, and I understand that it can be scary at times when you see Bitcoin pulling back, but we were closely following this and saying, Bitcoin is experiencing a correction, but and of course, Ethereum will experience a knee-jerk reaction in the event of a Bitcoin dump. We know this. This is common sense. This is partially the price you pay. It's the cost of admission, right? You have to be okay with the theoretical downside volatility, and that's what exists in the space. Okay? Knee-jerk reactions by Ethereum come on the back of dumps by Bitcoin. And if you noticed, if you were watching closely, Ethereum for a few hours was starting to look a little bit weaker against Bitcoin. And the reasoning for that, in my opinion, is just because people were really starting to wonder, okay, is Ethereum or is Bitcoin really about to dump to like 20K or something like that, or even 25K? And if it did, then we know we have a pretty good idea that the altcoin market in general would not do so well. Again, I don't consider Ethereum an altcoin. It's more so the index that I think altcoins need to beat to justify holding altcoins. But so far, Ethuary continues. It was, if we zoom in and go to, say, the first day of January, when we were first anticipating a move, first day of January, Ethereum was around 723. Now imagine telling your former self, if you could write a note to your former self on January 1st, and you told them, Ethereum will be 1235 in January, and you're going to be upset about it, right? Think about that. Think about how your former self would have received that letter. They're like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Like, a $1,200 Ethereum would be absolutely wonderful if we had that in January. So it just shows you how quickly sentiment can change on a dime. One day, everyone's happy that prices are going up, and therefore they become disillusioned with exactly how far things have come. And that's why it's even harder for new people to fathom how far we've come from the bottom. If you were late to the show and you were coming in at, say, $700-800 or even $1,000, you're up 20%. You're probably feeling pretty good about yourself, and so far so good. But the people that were buying over here are already up more than 10x. And so that's ultimately how a bubble, I would say, ends up collapsing, is at some point. And the prior Ethereum all-time high there's a decent chance that's not the area that it happens, at least over the entire market cycle. Again, none of this is financial advice, but at some point, the people that bought here are just not going to be able to contain themselves any longer, and they're going to want to take profits at some point. And I'm sure some people have already. So that's ultimately how a bubble ends up collapsing back down. Is imagine this were to continue trending up for a while. It's going to be harder and harder for these early people to not want to take profits. And then eventually there's going to be so many new people just because of word of mouth, and it's going to be in the news. There's going to be so many new people that can sustain the rally, can offset these sellers over here because the volume entering the space is so much higher. But there's going to come a time where someone will buy Ethereum and it'll be at some astronomical price, and we'll look around and there won't be anyone else to buy it because the market will have been exhausted. And at that point, things can get ugly pretty quickly. But one thing to look at too is, Ethereum, and we talked about this, Ethereum has approached its prior all-time high and it got rejected. And so far, if we look at the rejection that it saw, it went down by a modest 28%. Okay? What did Bitcoin do? What did Bitcoin do when it got to its prior all-time high? Well, it got to it around this point. And what happened? It corrected 17%. Ethereum corrected 27%. That's the price you pay, right? We always talk about risk-adjusted returns. If you're in Ethereum, you have to be willing to accept the higher level of volatility. You simply have to be willing to accept it. Ethereum will almost assuredly be more volatile than Bitcoin. However, it stands to potentially yield you a higher ROI. However, again, one of the things to consider is that most likely no one in the world will have bought Ethereum identically at the bottom and sold it at the top. So you can't confuse what's theoretically possible with what's plausible. Like, what's a plausible scenario? And so it's just something to consider, because Ethereum from the bottom of March is up well over 10x. And at this point, Bitcoin is not up 10x from the bottom. At one point, it did go above 10x from the bottom at like at $3,800, because we know it went over 40,000. But right now it's not, and Ethereum still is over 10x from the bottom. So yes, you can theoretically see higher returns in Ethereum, but you pay for it with units of risk and units and volatility. And that's why I've always said, don't let anyone ever tell you that you were lucky, because when you experience these downturns, when the market is dumping 30%, it takes some type of resolve to say, you know what, I get that it's dumping, but I believe that it's going to trend up over the duration of the market cycle. So you lived through the risk, you paid the price, then you get to experience the return. So this is how it works, right? It's all about the risks you take. It's all about the risks you take, and at some point, we don't know exactly the time it will come, but at some point, someone will enter the market, and that'll be the top. And they'll have taken an awful risk. It will have not, in no way would have been justified, and then they'll pay the price for it. So one of the things we can also look at is, well, after Bitcoin got to its prior all-time high, it's funny how we can look back in history, like this is now history, and it was only a few weeks ago. But here we are. After Bitcoin tested its prior all-time high, it took it about a week to come back and put in a higher all-time high, a new all-time high, closer to 20K. It still got rejected, and then it finally broke through 3 weeks later. Now, is Ethereum going to take 3 weeks? I don't know. We've seen before that it can take a while. I mean, these moves for Ethereum we've seen before. This one lasted from January until March before cooling off for a month. And then it moved up again until June before cooling off for a few months. And then in November, it moved up again. And then in January, it cooled off, and it never recovered, at least not in the short term. Now it has, but you have to consider the time value of your money, right? Do you really want to be sitting in Ethereum from this point to just break even, and you in fact haven't even broken even because of inflation? So if it were to go up, if we were to go up, let's suppose that Ethereum did something similar to Bitcoin. So January 19th was the first time it got to 1400. If we revisited it a week later, like exactly a week, which is what Bitcoin did, which we're probably not going to do exactly what Bitcoin did, but if we did, it would be January 26th. And if we did what Bitcoin did and took 3 weeks to break it entirely, it would imply breaking it on February 9th. So we'll see. Obviously, it stands to easily break it before that or not, but we're just looking to see, what Bitcoin did, and now this seems like so long ago, right? Look what Bitcoin has done since then. So it's all about a matter of perspective. Now, we know the downside risk for Ethereum, and the downside risk for Ethereum hasn't changed. At the very least, in a bull market, we know that the bull market support band is our downside risk. And it doesn't even mean we're going to hold it, but at the very least, that is a downside risk. And right now, it ranges from 612 to 696. So to maintain, we could theoretically maintain the integrity of the bull market and still go down to $612 tomorrow. It's still possible. As crazy as that sounds, that historically has been where we hold support in a bull market. And we held support over here to some degree. We moved into it at this point before coming back up. So keep an eye on it. Hopefully we don't visit it anytime soon. But if we do, I would consider it an opportunity. Right? I would consider it an opportunity. Now, am I buying Ethereum at these levels? No. That doesn't mean I don't want it to go up. I want it to go up. It's just, it's too far extended for me to want to come into the market. Now, it's not financial advice. Again, this comes from a biased perspective of owning Ethereum. If I didn't own Ethereum, then I would probably consider it to be something too risky not to hold. So hopefully that makes sense. If you guys like the content, remember, we're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. Give the video a thumbs up. We have the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. And on the premium list, you'll get access to weekly reports, weekly videos. Last night, we did a premium list live stream. So you get access to exclusive content. We have a risk dashboard, Telegram alerts channel, Telegram chat room, the trading view indicators. You get access to a whole lot of stuff. Make sure you guys check it out, intothecryptoverse.com. We have a lifetime deal for those that don't want to do the monthly subscription. And that way you just pay once for the content, and you're set at that point for it. So make sure you guys check it out, intothecryptoverse.com. The lifetime deal will be ending in about 9 days. So make sure you guys check that out. And if you want a link to that one, check it out in the description below. That'll wrap it up for the video. Make sure you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, turn on notifications, and I'll see you next time. Bye.